Whether it's seeing the Petronas Towers or starting a travel page, every big achievement starts with a small dream. That spark is powerful. Believe it, even if no one else does yet. One of the most misunderstood aspects of dreaming, real dreaming, not idle fantasy, is that it doesn't begin with action. It doesn't even begin with a plan. It begins with a spark, a barely audible whisper in the mind, fleeting image of something more. Maybe it's a distant skyline, the thought of walking through an airport alone for the first time, or even the quiet idea that you were meant for something greater than what surrounds you now. It's easy to overlook, to dismiss. And that's precisely what most people do. We're trained from a young age to view dreams with suspicion. Be realistic, they say. Play it safe. The world, especially one structured around rigid expectations and survival-focused thinking, often views dreaming as irresponsible. But here's the paradox. Everything you now take for granted, cities, careers, inventions, even societies, was once just a dream in someone's head. The key difference between people who live the life they want and those who don't isn't luck, intelligence, or even hard work, at least not initially. It's the ability to notice that spark and believe in it. And belief, psychologically speaking, is not merely intellectual agreement. It's embodied. It's when your behavior starts to shift, even subtly, in the direction of your dream, long before there's any proof that it's possible. When I first thought about international travel, it wasn't some grand announcement. It was a silent longing, a curiosity about what life was like beyond borders. The idea itself was irrational on paper. The financial risks, the unfamiliarity, the logistics. But the more I ignored it, the heavier it became. And that's often how dreams work. They don't scream, they haunt. They linger in the background, quietly eroding your contentment until you either answer them or bury them so deep you forget they were ever yours. And what's fascinating is this: the moment you begin to believe in a dream, your perception of reality starts to change. What was once impossible begins to seem merely difficult. The brain, biologically wired for survival, begins to open itself to new neural pathways, opportunities, and patterns of thought. You start noticing things you'd never seen before. A video about travel visas, a cheap flight, a chance encounter with someone who's been where you want to go. You're not imagining them. They were always there. You just couldn't see them until your belief made space for them. But belief is costly. It demands risk. It requires you to confront the possibility of failure, ridicule, and discomfort. And that's why so many people choose comfort over calling, because the dream in its early stages offers no guarantee. Just a vision, just a feeling, just a spark. There's a philosophical weight to this, and it's rooted in the concept of logos. The idea that within every word, every thought, every dream, there's a creative force, not metaphorically, literally. You speak it and you begin to shape your world. You dream it and suddenly you're not the same person anymore. You become someone accountable to a higher vision of yourself. That's no small thing. People often ask, but what if I fail? And the honest answer is, you might, but you have to understand that the act of believing in the dream is already a form of success. You're not competing with the world. You're aligning yourself with meaning. You're saying, this is worth trying, even if I fall short. And that, in a deeply psychological and moral sense, is what transforms chaos into order. The spark of a dream doesn't need to come with a blueprint. It doesn't need permission. It only asks for your attention, your belief, and eventually your courage. Don't wait for certainty. It won't come. Don't wait for validation. It's irrelevant. Pay attention to the whisper, because the moment you do, your life will begin to move in a direction only you can walk. Every revolution begins not with action, but with belief. And belief begins when you dare to take your dreams seriously. Leaving Pakistan for the first time, navigating visa processes, or standing in a new country alone, all of it takes bravery. Dreams push us out of comfort zones and into growth. If belief is the seed of a dream, then courage is the soil in which it either lives or dies. You can have the spark, that inner vision of something more, but if you lack the courage to act on it, that spark eventually fades. The truth is, every real dream, every worthwhile pursuit requires you to step into the unknown. And that's not poetic. It's deeply psychological. Fear is hardwired into us. From an evolutionary standpoint, we were never meant to chase possibilities. We were meant to avoid threats. And stepping beyond borders, whether literal or psychological, activates that primal fear. You don't know what's out there. You don't know what you'll lose. But what people fail to realize is that what you're risking by not moving is often far greater than anything you'll face by moving forward. When I first left my country, it wasn't just a physical departure. It was a confrontation with everything familiar, everything predictable. The air was different. The language was different. Even the way people crossed the street was different. And when you're out of place, when you're the foreigner, you begin to understand just how fragile your identity is. You realize how many parts of you were built only to survive in a certain context. And that's when growth begins. Not when things are comfortable, but when they're confusing, when you don't know what to do next, and yet you keep going. Courage then isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision that something else, something higher, is more important than that fear. This is where we begin to align with the concept of telos, the idea that every human being has a unique aim or end, and it's not handed to you. It's discovered through effort, through trial, and very often through pain. But you only find that aim by venturing out into unknown territory. Most people live in what you might call psychological safety zones. These are the places, roles, and routines that protect them from failure. They say, at least I know what to expect here. But what they don't see is that this safety comes at a cost, a kind of quiet despair that accumulates over time. It's the death of potential. And potential, unrealized, doesn't just go away. It turns against you. It becomes bitterness, envy, resentment. That's the consequence of refusing the call to courage. Now, in modern terms, courage often looks less dramatic than the stories we hear. No swords, no battlefields. But the psychological intensity is the same. It's the courage to speak a truth in a room where no one agrees. It's the courage to book that flight, knowing you might feel lost when you land. It's the courage to invest in your dream, even if there's no applause waiting on the other side. These are real acts of bravery, and they change you. Each time you step out, each time you act despite fear, you're training your nervous system to expand its range. You're teaching yourself that discomfort isn't a signal to retreat. It's a signal that you're growing. In neuroscience, we'd call this adaptation. Spiritually, we might call it transformation. Either way, it's a shift in identity. You're no longer just the one who dreamed. You become the one who acted. You can't control every outcome. But that's not the point. The point is to become the kind of person who chooses movement over stagnation, responsibility over comfort, and meaning over ease. Because the dream, your dream, is not a destination, it's a direction. And courage is what keeps you on the path, even when the terrain gets rough. So if you're afraid, good, that means you're close to something that matters. But don't stop there. Step forward, lean into it, not recklessly, but willingly. The door to your dream doesn't open by chance. It opens the moment you decide to walk toward it, even when your knees are shaking. A love for travel and storytelling can turn into something greater, like building a platform that inspires others. When you chase what you love, the dream becomes your life's calling. There's a moment in every meaningful journey when the dream begins to transform. What started as an image in your mind or a desire in your chest begins to crystallize into something more serious, something more demanding, purpose. And this is a critical psychological shift, because while a dream can inspire you, it's purpose that sustains you. A dream is about you. Purpose includes others. It turns your longing into responsibility. We live in a culture obsessed with passion. Follow your passion is the anthem of our age. But passion without direction is like fire with no container. It burns bright for a moment, then dies. The real question is, can your passion evolve into something stable, something meaningful, and perhaps most importantly, something useful? That's where purpose enters. And purpose isn't something you magically find one morning. It's something that emerges when you begin to orient your actions around a goal that's larger than your own comfort. Let's say your dream is to travel the world. That's fine, even beautiful. But then something happens. You start documenting your experiences. People begin to listen. Your photos, your stories, they inspire others who've never left their town, who never believed it was possible for someone like them. Suddenly, this isn't just about you anymore. You've become a channel for meaning, and that shift is powerful. It restructures your priorities. You're no longer motivated solely by pleasure or novelty. You're driven by a sense of responsibility to do something that matters, to contribute. That's when you know your passion has matured into purpose. There's a concept in psychology called self-transcendence. It refers to the process of moving beyond your own ego, not to erase it, but to integrate it into a larger whole. You stop asking, what can I get? And you begin to ask, what can I give? That change from ego to contribution is where lasting meaning is found. Because let's be honest, you can only travel so far, collect so many experiences before you start to feel the emptiness of doing it for yourself alone. But when you realize that your passion, whether it's photography, writing, building, leading, can serve others, something clicks. You become aligned with what philosophers have long called your calling. Not just a job, not a career, but a role that only you can play in the world, because no one else has lived your story. No one else has your exact voice. This doesn't mean it becomes easy. In fact, it often becomes harder. Purpose adds weight. It demands discipline. You can't just quit when you're tired or bored. There are people watching now, people who draw strength from your courage, who see their future reflected in your steps. And that weight, though it can be exhausting, is also what makes life meaningful. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychologist, wrote, "Those who have a why to live can bear almost any how." When you link your dream to a deeper why, you tap into something that mere motivation can't provide. You develop endurance, you gain clarity, and that clarity helps you push through the inevitable chaos. The setbacks, the doubts, the moments where nothing seems to work, because now you're not chasing a feeling. You're fulfilling a purpose, and purpose ultimately is what transforms suffering. It doesn't remove it, but it gives it context. It means your pain isn't wasted. It means your challenges, your failures, even your heartbreak, they're all contributing to something larger, something that might help someone else find the strength to keep going. So yes, start with your dream. Let it excite you. Let it light you up. But don't stop there. Ask yourself, what is this dream calling me to become? How can I shape it into something that outlives my own satisfaction? Because when you link your passion to a higher purpose, you no longer just live for yourself. You begin to live in service of something eternal. The moment your passion finds its purpose, your life stops being an escape and becomes a mission. From planning your first trip to facing uncertainty abroad, every obstacle is part of your dream's journey. It's not failure, it's fuel for your next leap forward. There's a moment in every pursuit, especially those rooted in dreams, when things go wrong. Not might go wrong, will. The plan falls apart. The timing feels off. The resources dry up, and you start to question everything. Was this a mistake? Am I in over my head? Did I misread the signals? These aren't signs that you're failing. They're signs that you're on the path. Struggle is not an interruption to the dream. It's part of the dream. In fact, it's the part that defines whether you're merely chasing a fantasy or building something real. Fantasy demands only desire. Reality demands discipline, endurance, and the willingness to confront discomfort without letting it destroy your direction. People tend to associate struggle with failure, but that's a very shallow interpretation. Psychologically, struggle is the crucible where transformation occurs. When everything is going well, you learn very little about yourself. It's when things break down When the plan collapses, that you're forced to adapt, to dig deeper, to confront who you actually are beneath the ideal. Carl Jung said, "No tree can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell." That's not just metaphor, that's psychological truth. If you want your dream to soar, you need the depth of character that only suffering can forge. You need the capacity to endure ambiguity, loneliness, frustration, and still stay the course. Think about it this way. If the road to your dream were perfectly smooth, what would it teach you? You'd arrive untested, unchanged, and unprepared. Struggle is the training ground. It's how you develop resilience, clarity, and conviction. You don't build muscle by lifting light weights. You grow by pushing against resistance. It's the same with your mind. It's the same with your spirit. And here's the thing. When you go through hardship and keep going, something fascinating happens. You stop identifying with the pain. You start identifying with the strength it produces. You become someone who says, yes, that happened to me, and I kept going. That's power. That's agency. And it's permanent, but many people never reach that stage. Because the first time things fall apart, they retreat. They interpret discomfort as a verdict. I'm not cut out for this. That's a lie. More often, what it really means is, I've hit the part of the journey where my old self has to die. And that's terrifying, because no one tells you that chasing your dream means losing the version of you that couldn't carry it. But that's the price, and it's worth it. There's a deeper philosophical point here. Life, as we experience it, is not a straight line. It's a dance between chaos and order, between the unknown and the known. When you dream, you voluntarily step into chaos. You leave what's familiar. You embrace unpredictability. And inevitably, you will encounter setbacks. But within those setbacks are the building blocks of your future self. In the religious and mythological traditions, this journey is constant. The hero ventures out, fails, nearly dies, and is reborn. Not because it makes a good story, but because it reflects psychological reality. You have to go through the underworld. You have to face the dragon. And if you do, if you endure, you come back with treasure, wisdom, strength, self-respect. Even the mistakes become part of the gift. The detours, the missed chances, the embarrassing moments. Over time, they don't disqualify you, they qualify you. Because you've suffered and you've continued. And that gives you moral authority. That's what makes people trust you. That's what gives your voice weight. So don't resent the struggle. Respect it. Engage with it. Let it refine you. Because on the other side of hardship is not just success, it's maturity. It's the version of you that your dream was trying to build all along. The struggle isn't the enemy of your dream. It's the fire that shapes the one who can carry it. Whether through social media or real-life connections, your story can light someone else's way. Dreams are contagious. When you share yours, you give others permission to dream too. There's a point, often after the excitement has worn off and the struggle has settled into routine, when you're faced with a simple but profound question, can I sustain this? And that's where we confront the final and perhaps most misunderstood aspect of chasing a dream: commitment. We tend to think of dreams as bursts of inspiration, fueled by passion and enthusiasm. But that version of dreaming is short-lived. Real dreams, the kind that grow into purpose, that survive hardship, require staying power. They require a daily decision to keep showing up, especially when the thrill is gone and all that's left is the responsibility. This is where people often falter. They expect the fire to stay lit on its own, but the fire doesn't tend itself. You have to feed it with discipline, routine, and consistency. And this isn't some motivational cliche, it's psychological reality. Your nervous system craves stability. It's not wired to chase chaos indefinitely. If you want to turn a dream into a reality, you have to embed it into your behavior. You have to live in alignment with it, day in and day out, even when no one's watching. Especially when no one's watching, there's an old idea from Aristotle: we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. And that applies to dreams, too. The moment you reduce your dream to a set of actionable, repeatable behaviors, it becomes sustainable. You no longer depend on bursts of motivation. You develop a system. And that's the bridge between inspiration and accomplishment. When I first started documenting my journey, the travel, the lessons, the evolution, it felt like play. It felt fresh. But soon, the novelty wore off. There were deadlines. There was editing. There were moments I didn't want to share anything. That's when I realized something important. If I only moved when I felt like it, the dream would die. Feelings are unreliable companions. They fluctuate. But principles, those are stable, and commitment is a principle. It says, I'm not just chasing a mood, I'm building a life. Commitment is what separates dreamers from builders. It's easy to start something. Everyone starts, but few people finish. Fewer still keep going long after the applause has faded, because that's where it gets real, where it gets heavy. That's where your dream stops being a fantasy and becomes a discipline. And discipline in this context isn't punishment, it's structure. It's the bones of your vision. Philosophically, this connects to the notion of the sacred task. Not sacred in a religious sense necessarily, but in a moral and existential one. When you commit to your dream, you're saying, this matters enough for me to sacrifice for it. You're voluntarily accepting the burden that comes with meaningful work. And that burden, paradoxically, is what gives life its richness. People avoid commitment because they fear being trapped. They think it limits freedom. But the opposite is true. Commitment creates freedom. Not the freedom to do whatever you want, but the freedom to do what matters most without being derailed by impulse or distraction. That kind of freedom is earned. It's the result of discipline stacked over time, like bricks building a cathedral. And here's the reward. When you live in alignment with your dream, consistently, deliberately, you start to become trustworthy in your own eyes. That's huge, because so many people live in quiet self-doubt, not because they're weak, but because they don't keep promises to themselves. They break their own word. But every time you follow through, every time you choose discipline over ease, you build self-respect. And self-respect is the foundation of a meaningful life. So the question becomes, will you choose to show up even when it's inconvenient? Will you keep your promise to your own potential? Because the dream will not survive on excitement alone. It needs your commitment, daily, humble, often unnoticed. But it's in those unseen hours that your future is forged. A dream fulfilled is not the result of a single leap, but of 1,000 small steps taken with unwavering commitment